Good evening, and welcome to the Albuquerque Center for Spiritual Living. I am Reverend Amani Malaika, and I am so grateful you are here. And for those of you who are watching online, welcome and blessings. I am excited to talk tonight about resting in the wild. We've been talking about resting and slowing in this winter season, and I love the idea of taking this opportunity and this time during this season to really deepen and rest in faith. And so we are in the third week of our discussion and practice around faith. And tonight we're going to be talking about what it means to trust that infinite one, that holy blessed one that is all. And even when life feels wild, even when the outer circumstances feel like crazy town, still, in this trusting place of faith, we can rest in it. So that's what we're doing together this evening. That's what we're doing if you are watching on demand at some other time. And I'm going to begin with Peace of the Wild Things from Wendell Berry. When despair grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lay down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the stillness of water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for the light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. For a time, let us rest in the grace of the world and touch, maybe sip, freedom. And I want to invite you in this place of rest, in this place where we are going to intentionally set aside time to rest in grace together, to think of something that is feeling out of alignment. Something in your life that is feeling like struggle or difficulty that you may be able to take this next hour and rest from. In the poem that I shared earlier, that in times of despair, in times of lost, in times of feeling absolutely wrecked by life maybe, that this impulse to rest in grace, this idea that there's a place, there's a space within you that you can rest in is an act of trust. Of trusting that even in the despair, you can lay by the river and be held by grace. Even when life is showing up in heinous ways, you can rest in the quiet of your own inner truth. And this faith that we long for that is far greater than belief, acceptance, and trust alone relies on the willingness to test it out, to try it on, to follow that impulse that is within each one of us as divinely made beings that says there's something more than this pain. There is something beyond this moment of despair. And it's in the active trusting, the active resting in grace, the active willingness to move beyond the 70,000 veils, as the Hadith teaches. And as Rabbi Abraham Herschel says, it is a constant efforting to listen to that eternal voice. And the only place that that voice can be heard is in your own being. So the trust is not trusting just that there is an eternal voice. Trusting that this holy blessed one that is all things seen and unseen, understood and beyond our understanding, 70,000 veils away or right here. It is trusting that you, too, have access to this inner wisdom, that you have the capacity to hear the eternal voice, that you can trust the impulse in yourself that leads you to an experience beyond your pain and suffering. This is the trust that is real. It's beyond our theology. It's beyond any theory. It's beyond the words that I can say about it. It is built up from experience. It's built up from having your own contact with the eternal voice, from having your own moment of rest and grace. And it is an efforting. I think sometimes in spiritual life, when we come into rooms like these, or we seek out sacred texts, or whatever, right? Whatever seeking we find ourselves doing, there's a wish often, right? There's a wish that somehow these prophets and saints and texts and poems are going to give me the thing, are going to give me the faith, are going to give me the comfort and ease that I'm longing for, the escape, maybe even, from my own pain and suffering. And it is not a thing, y'all. Has anybody successfully solved an issue in their life because they read a sacred text? Anybody? Has anybody suddenly acted in a more loving way from a book or a movie? Temporarily. And I would offer that you've never done it, because it still had to come from you. It was still your action. It was you taking those words in, or that image in, or that poem in, or that whatever in, that outside influence, and allowed it to resonate and move in your own being. It always comes from you. Any experience of faith, any experience of the numinous, any experience of God or the divine or whatever you want to name it, the absolute, the infinite, the Holy Blessed One, you are required to be there for it. And what I have discovered in my own journey along the way is you must trust that you can be there for it. You must trust that how you've absorbed that word or that image or that poem or that movie or that music or that thing, how you've absorbed it and made sense, sensed it in your own being, is trustworthy. That your ability to meet the divine, your ability to locate yourself resting in grace, is trustworthy. And what I have discovered in my own path along the way, that the greatest work of faith does not lie in my ability to understand God, or to have the perfect right theology, or to read the right perfect sacred texts, or to do the right form of meditation and prayer. That's like 2% of the process. The faith work, the experience of the divine, the ability to be freed from my own pain and suffering lies in me trusting that I belong to this Holy Blessed One, that I truly am made of this one thing. I can believe it in theory, but until I allow myself to fully trust my own capacity to experience it and to live it, my faith is limited. It's limited to theory. And I love the poem because it begins with this reality that we all experience at some point, that when despair grows in me, every single one of us on this planet has the experience of despair growing in us. Yeah? Anybody unfamiliar with despair?
Not for the last hour.
Hallelujah. But despair, that experience of pain that can literally grow in your experience, can literally begin to take over your entire attention, right? That experience of your aliveness in and of itself can be the pointer to moving to rest and grace. It's the pain itself that can say, hey, attend to me. Attend to the wholeness that you are that is bigger than this pain. Which is where I believe this poem came from. When despair grows, when I am in fear, I go and lay down. I go and surrender my whole self to something greater that I trust will be there. And this work of faith is trusting that you will do that. That you have the capacity, that you have the wisdom, that you have the muscle to have the experience of despair, to have the experience of fear, and instead of numbing and distracting and blaming and victimizing and all villainizing, whatever your thing is, you go lay down in grace. It's trusting your own self within this greater whole, within this greater infinite one, which is the first truth of perennial wisdom, which we'll be talking about all winter long, is that there is only one, and it is manifest in this thing called life as all that is, including you and I, and all the people you like and don't like. Every little bit of life itself is the manifestation of this one thing that goes by many, 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 many names. And the faith in that truth says that no matter what is happening in your life, despair, fear, joy, celebration, heinous, tragic experiences, whatever is happening in your life, still the one continues to be the one. And that you, as a manifestation of the Holy Blessed One, have access to grace at all times, no matter what. And so we must believe, accept, and trust that as true. Right? It is foundation. It is a pillar of spiritual perennial wisdom. But the efforting isn't necessarily in believing that to be true or even accepting that to be true. The efforting is in the trusting of the self to rest in the truth, to allow that truth to hold you in those moments of pain, to give your pain, to give your despair, to give whatever those circumstances are over to something greater. And when you do that, guess what begins to happen in your life? The suffering stops. The pain is not going to stop. Horrible things happening in the world is not going to stop. But the suffering, which is really us perseverating around the pain, looping it in our heads, retelling the stories over and over again, all the things we do to resist it and avoid it, is what brings suffering. The resisting of that reality is what creates the suffering. But there's a moment of choice, which is where that poem came from. When I despair, when I awake in the night in fear, I go lay down. I rest in the place where the wild things are. Because I believe most of us can have an experience in nature, this really, really obvious place where we can see God, right? This really obvious place to be reminded that there is something magical going on in this thing called life, that is nature. There's something magical by the fact that you and I live on a spinning globe. And that when we intentionally put ourselves in contact with that magic called nature, we are reminded that, ooh, me too. I am nature. I am made of these minerals and atoms and magical things that this nature is also made of, which makes me it. And it's this instant way to place yourself in the arms of the Holy Blessed One. And I believe the efforting becomes in the willingness to make that choice again and again and again. To center your faith, your belief and acceptance and trust in this truth that it is all one, which we know in the science of mind teaching that if it is all one, then I too am it. I cannot be separate from it. My experience cannot be separate from it. But the efforting comes in the choosing, in the habituating yourself to actively listening and resting in what you believe and accept and trust to be true. So for a moment, I want you to think about if you were to more wholly trust that you have an inward access to grace, that you have an inward access to the eternal voice, an inward place of truth. If you were to really trust that, how might you move in your life in a new way? How might you show up in your relationships differently? How might you show up in your work or your day-to-day activities differently? How might you show up in the communities you belong to differently? Not a rhetorical question. Sit with that idea for a moment. If I really trusted that I could rest and rely on the inner truth that is in my own being, how might I move differently in the world? Think of a specific relationship, work situation, community situation, family situation that could shift because you choose to trust this about yourself. One of the guiding ideas this year that I've been writing around for us to be practicing and discussing and working on is the idea from Father Richard Rohr, who is the founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And he's got a principle in their community that you cannot think your way into a new way of living. You must live your way into a new way of thinking. I think he's right. I really do. I think we spend a lot of time trying to think ourselves to something new. And the reality is most of us don't change our minds until we experience this new, right? It may not even be a formed ability to talk about, as Joanna just shared, this thing. But we experience a passion, we experience a new feeling, we experience a new way of being in our lives, even if it's just dipping our toe in or sipping it for a moment. And it's that begins to change our thinking. And so this is that idea when Abraham Heschel speaks to we must constantly effort in faith. Because it is a living into greater faith that you and I most long for, even if you haven't named it that yet. But that longing in you that longs for something more, that longs for greater experience of love, that longs for a greater ease in your body, that longs for a greater experience of abundance, all of that longing is that experience that is moving in you into a more full, lived experience of your true nature. And it's because you have the experience, which is why I'm deeply committed to that you and I are going to continue to practice this stuff together. One of the goals I wrote for myself this year as a minister was to establish this community as a community of practice. Because we are some heady folks. We love to talk about this stuff and read about this stuff and think about this stuff, but we don't spend enough time putting it on. Right? It's like you don't know if that looks good on you yet because you haven't tried it on. You can think about a new outfit all you want. You can think about, I'm going to try this new style or I'm going to try this new haircut. You can think about that all you want. But until you try it, you don't know. You don't know if you have a new idea. You don't know if you have a new way of thinking about yourself until you try it, which is one of my favorite things about the science of mind. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, named it Science of Mind because it's a science, this metaphysical idea, this principle of oneness in this universe that you and I can use because we belong to it. It is something you can try and prove for yourself. And in the trying it on, in the choosing to actively develop faith, to actively deepen your trust in your own inner wisdom, in that eternal voice that speaks to you in a specifically unique you way, it is in the trying that on and letting it move you in new ways of being, new ways of acting, that you will then change your mind about who you are in this one life. You will begin to change your thinking based on your experience, on the evidence you have. That is what will actually change your mind. That is what will begin in a circular sort of way to change what you believe to be possible for yourself. Which then changes what you accept to be true, which changes how much more you can trust your own self, which then changes your life. But it's active, it's practice, and it's an ongoing practice. I was sharing with my students this last week that I have a practice as a minister that I try to burst bubbles as early in the process as I can. So bursting a bubble, this does not end. There is not a holy grail. When you discover nirvana or heaven or whatever you want to name this place, that is not an end. It is an ongoing efforting. It is an ongoing changing your mind. It is an ongoing living your way into deeper faith, deeper belief, deeper acceptance, deeper trust. And what I know is magical about it is everything that may have brought you into this room tonight, may have brought you to this video right now, can change, will change, as a result of your willingness to live into greater faith. Period. The world that you and I want to be living in comes into being because you have chosen to get free from your own suffering. There is no other possibility. There is no freedom and liberation for all unless there's freedom and liberation for you and I. Impossible. And so what I know for sure, and I believe there's a real shift in humanity itself around the longing, the willingness to do the work, to do the practice, to engage in this consciously and intentionally to transform our own lives, and in so doing, transforming the lives of this planet. I deeply believe that, and I deeply believe that you and I are actively participating in this human shift. And this is the work of it. This is the nitty-gritty, the particulars, as Howard Thurman likes to say. As you and I simply making a choice in our own pain to move towards faith, to rest in grace, rather than the numbing, the distracting, the resisting, the avoiding, the blaming. And it's a choice, moment by moment, experience by experience, situation by situation. And in doing that and making that active choice, literally moving your body to a place of rest, moving yourself to a place of centering, whatever that looks like for you, because you do that, you change your vibrational frequency, you change your consciousness, you expand your awareness of what is actually so. You have an experience of this thing that is greater than your life, that is greater than your uniqueness, that is greater than your pain. You begin to touch it, you begin to feel it, you begin to sense it, you begin to allow it to move you in right action. And because you do that, you touch into the oneness. You touch into the wholeness that each of us is a member of. You touch into your inherent belonging to all of life. All from a moment of your own pain, your own fear. You don't ever have to read another book. Swear. It's a practice. And it's an ongoing practice that is entirely worthwhile. It is the work of freedom and liberation. For you and for us. Faith is entirely a worthwhile endeavor. When I read things like Abraham Heschel, when he said, it's a constant effort, I'm like, that's not a good selling point, Abraham. People are not likely going to sign up like, I'm in! Constant efforting! Yay! The reward is great. That longing that you feel is met through it. The change you want to see in your life is met through that efforting. So, ask.
It's what? That feeling is what? I can't hear that word that you're saying.
I just said a lot of words, so I'm not sure which one. Met. Met. Yes, the M word was met. Everything you want in your life, everything you want to experience, everything you want to change is met through this constant choosing to live into your faith. And if you are at least a maybe for this work, let us anchor it in prayer. I absolutely know in every fiber of my being that there is only one. And that this one is so big that it contains universes. It births every animated form of life moment by moment by moment, never, ever, ever making a mistake. It is orchestrating this great becoming in every breath I take and every exhale you make. It is absolutely all there is. And I know this truth holds you and I up, lifts you and I up into a greater awareness of it. I know that this one is always infinitely giving itself as you and I, as every bud that is starting to form in this winter season, as every little microbe under the ground that is doing all it can do to support life itself, as every leaf that has fallen, and as every bare branch, as every dark night and bright day. It is all one. And what a great gift it is for you and I to be alive with breath in our bodies in this very moment, to have the experience of this holy, blessed one, to be here for it right now, to have been chosen in this aliveness, to have another chance, another breath to more fully experience the connectedness to the one, as the one, to celebrate that holy truth. It is good, it is always good. It is moving for greater good. And I know that you and I intentionally and consciously choose to use this breath in our bodies to intentionally grow our experience and our offering of the greater good. It is what we are here for. So I just let it be, continuing to blossom in this incredible life. Anchor this with me in prayer by saying amen, and so it is.